The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Crystal walls reached toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table, each representative. More impressive than the last, some had multiple arms, others had scales that changed color with their moods. A few floated in special tanks filled with glowing liquid. At the head of the table sat Admiral Kai, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. His uniform was covered in medals and ribbons that showed his many victories across the galaxy. Next to him sat Nara, his deputy, whose blue tentacles moved constantly as she sorted through data on floating screens. "Today we discuss the primitive worlds," Admiral Kai announced, his voice echoing through the hall. "Which backward planets shall we add to our great empire this month?" The other representatives leaned forward with interest. This was always their favorite part of the monthly meeting. They loved to laugh at the silly creatures who still used simple technology and fought wars with basic weapons. Wu Jin, a young analyst from the Kethron species, stood up nervously. He was much smaller than the others, with gray skin and large black eyes that made him look worried all the time. His hands shook slightly as he activated the main display screen. "I have prepared a report on a planet called Earth," Wu Jin said, quietly. "The creatures there call themselves humans." The screen lit up with images of blue oceans and green continents. Then it showed pictures of human cities with tall buildings and busy streets filled with strange vehicles that moved on round. Wheels instead of floating like proper transportation? Admiral Kai laughed, a sound like metal scraping against metal. "Look at those crude structures. They still build with concrete and steel like savages." The images changed to show human military forces. Soldiers marched in formation carrying weapons that shot small metal bullets. Tanks rolled across fields, leaving tracks in the dirt behind them. Then the display showed human ships floating on the surface of Earth's oceans. "These are their most powerful warships," Wu Jin explained, pointing to a massive gray vessel with large gun turrets. "They call this one a battleship. It weighs over 50,000 tons and carries crew of nearly 3,000 humans." The entire council burst into laughter. Nara's tentacles turned bright purple with amusement. "They float on water like primitive boats! How wonderfully backward!" "Look at those gun turrets," added another representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many branches. "They fire solid metal projectiles using chemical explosives. I have not seen such crude technology in 1,000 years." Admiral Kai stood up and walked closer to the display. His 4 eyes studied the human battleship with the kind of look a scientist might give to an interesting bug. "Fascinating. They have not even discovered plasma weapons or energy shields. Their ships are just floating metal boxes with simple cannons. The analysis shows they use something called steel armor for protection." Wu Jin continued reading from his notes. "It appears to be layers of metal welded together. Very basic defensive technology. Steel armor." Admiral Kai could barely contain his amusement. "We abandoned such primitive materials before your species learned to walk upright, young Wu Jin. Our plasma weapons can cut through their strongest metals like they were made of soft cheese." Other council members nodded in agreement. They had all seen what their advanced energy weapons could do to primitive armor. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw the power of Galactic Council technology. "What about their space capabilities?" asked Nara, her tentacles now shifting to a curious green color. "Surely they have at least developed basic starships?" Wu Jin shook his head sadly. "They have barely left their home planet. A few small missions to their moon, some tiny robots sent to nearby planets. Their fastest ships would take them hundreds of years to reach even the closest star." "Perfect." Admiral Kai slammed his hand on the table, causing several smaller representatives to jump in surprise. "This is exactly what we need, a simple conquest to remind the galaxy of our power." He began pacing around the table, his military mind already working on plans. "Think about it, fellow council members. We have been at peace for too long. Some of the outer systems are beginning to question our authority. They wonder if the great Galactic Council has grown soft and weak." "But surely these humans pose no threat at all," said one representative, a creature that looked like a giant butterfly with far too many wings. "Why waste our time with such primitive beings?" Admiral Kai's 4 eyes gleamed with excitement. Exactly because they are so primitive. We will broadcast the entire conquest across the galaxy. Every species will watch as our mighty fleet easily defeats these backward humans and their crude metal ships. It will be the perfect demonstration of our overwhelming power. Nara's tentacles turned a bright yellow that showed her growing excitement. The psychological effect will be tremendous. If we can destroy their most powerful warships in minutes, every other species will remember why they fear us. "How many ships should we send?" asked another council member. Admiral Kai thought for a moment, then smiled a terrifying smile that showed rows of sharp silver teeth. "Just one dreadnought should be more than enough. We do not want to make this look too easy after all. Let them think they have a chance before we crush their hopes." He turned to look at the display again, studying the human battleship with its simple guns and metal armor. "I will send Captain Minho with the Star's Dominion, one of our newest and most powerful ships against their strongest vessel. The contrast will be beautiful." "When shall we begin this demonstration?" Nara asked. "Already beginning to prepare the necessary orders. Immediately," Admiral Kai declared. "I want every species in the galaxy to see this conquest within the week. Send messages to all the news networks. Tell them the Great Galactic Council is about to welcome a new member to our empire." The other representatives cheered and clapped, their various appendages together. Some species made whistling sounds, others clicked their claws, and a few simply glowed brighter with approval. Wu Jin quietly gathered his data files and prepared to leave. Something about the whole situation made him feel uncomfortable, though he could not explain why. The humans did seem very primitive compared to the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. Their weapons and ships looked simple and crude. But as he walked back to his small office, Wu Jin could not shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The human battleship had looked primitive, yes, but there had been something about its design that seemed purposeful. Like it was built to do one thing very, very well. He decided he would study the human military files more carefully tonight, just to be absolutely certain they had not overlooked any details. After all, his job was to provide complete and accurate intelligence, even about primitive species that posed no real threat to the mighty Galactic Council. Space around Earth looked peaceful and quiet. The blue planet slowly turned in the darkness, showing the lights of human cities on the night side. A few small satellites moved in careful orbits, and the moon hung like a silver coin in the distance. Then the stars began to bend and twist in one spot. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and suddenly a massive alien ship appeared, where empty space had been moments before. The Star's Dominion was beautiful in a deadly way. Its smooth hull gleamed like polished silver, and energy crackled along, weapon arrays that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of his ship, looking down at Earth through the main viewing window. He was tall even for his species, with dark purple skin and 6 arms that moved independently as he worked the control panels. His uniform was spotless, and his 3 eyes showed the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Scan the area for their primitive warships," Minho ordered his crew. "I want to find their strongest vessel and make this demonstration memorable." The ship's sensors, more advanced than anything humans had ever dreamed of, swept across Earth's oceans in seconds. They found aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and cruisers from dozens of different nations. But one ship stood out from all the others. "Captain, we have located what appears to be their most powerful surface vessel," reported his weapons officer, a creature with crystal skin that changed colors as he spoke. "It matches the specifications from the intelligence report. They call it the UHNS Indomitable." Captain Minho smiled, showing teeth like black diamonds. "Perfect. Display it on screen." The main view screen showed a gray warship cutting through the ocean waves. It was enormous by human standards, over 800 feet long, and bristling with gun turrets. Steam rose from its stacks, and its wake stretched out behind it like a white arrow on the blue water. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Ji-hoon was reviewing navigation charts when his radar operator suddenly sat up straight in his chair. "Sir, we have a contact," the young sailor announced, his voice tight with confusion. "Bearing 020 range. This can't be right." Captain Ji-hoon looked up from his charts. He was a calm man in his 40s, with the steady hands and sharp eyes of someone who had spent his entire life at sea. "What is it, Seaman Park?" "Sir, the contact appears to be directly above us. at an altitude of approximately 50,000 feet. But it's massive, larger than anything in our database. The captain walked over to the radar display and studied it carefully. The contact was indeed huge, easily 10 times the size of any aircraft he had ever seen. More importantly, it was holding a perfect position relative to their ship. Sound. "General quarters," Captain Jihoon ordered quietly. "All hands to battle stations." Alarm bells rang throughout the Indomitable. Hundreds of sailors ran to their positions as the great ship prepared for whatever was coming. In the weapons control room, Chief Dong-Hyun checked his systems one final time. The ship's main guns, each capable of firing shells the size of small cars, turned toward the sky. Tactical Officer So-young arrived on the bridge at a run, still buckling her helmet. She was young but brilliant, one of the top graduates from the Naval Academy. "Captain, what's our situation?" "Unknown contact holding position above us," Jihoon replied. "Range 50,000 feet, size unknown but very large." Before anyone could respond, every radio and communication device on the ship crackled to life with the same message, spoken in perfect Korean by a voice that sounded nothing like any human language. "Primitive vessel of Earth, you will surrender immediately. Your species has been selected for integration into the Galactic Council Empire. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your planet." The bridge fell silent. Captain Jihoon walked to the communications station and picked up the microphone. His voice was calm and professional, the same tone he might use to discuss the weather. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Jihoon of the United Human Naval Ship Indomitable. You are in territorial waters of Earth without permission. You have 30 seconds to identify yourself and state your intentions, or we will consider you a hostile force." On the alien bridge, Captain Minho laughed so hard his 6 arms shook. "Did you hear that? The primitive actually thinks he can threaten us." "Shall I destroy them immediately, Captain?" asked the weapons officer, already charging the main plasma cannons. "No, no," Minho replied, wiping tears from his 3 eyes. "Let us give them a demonstration first. Fire 1 warning shot. Use minimum power. I want to see the look on their primitive faces when they realize how hopeless their situation is." A beam of bright green energy lanced down from the alien ship. It struck the Indomitable's forward armor belt with a flash that lit up the entire ocean for miles around. Steam rose from the impact point, and every piece of electronic equipment on the ship flickered for a moment. In the Indomitable's damage control center, reports came flooding in from all over the ship. But as the technicians checked their instruments, they began to look confused. "Captain," So-young announced after reviewing the damage reports, "their energy weapon registered as approximately equivalent to a standard armor-piercing shell from a 16-inch gun. Hull integrity is at 99.8%. No casualties, minimal damage to forward armor plating." Captain Jihoon nodded calmly. "Understood. Communications, open a channel." On the alien ship, Captain Minho waited for the surrender message he was certain would come. Instead, the same calm human voice filled his bridge. "Unknown vessel, you have fired upon a ship of the United Human Navy. This constitutes an act of war. You have 1 opportunity to withdraw from this area immediately, or we will respond with appropriate force." Captain Minho's laughter died in his throat. "Appropriate force? Their primitive kinetic weapons cannot even scratch our hull armor." But his confidence wavered slightly. The warning shot should have crippled the human ship, or at least caused significant damage. According to his sensors, it had barely left a mark. "Perhaps their armor is thicker than we thought," suggested his science officer, a nervous creature with too many eyes and not enough backbone. "Impossible," Minho snapped. "Our intelligence reports were complete. They use primitive steel. Plating, 1 full power shot from our main weapons will cut that ship in half." On the human ship, Communications Officer Ji-won was frantically sending coded messages to naval headquarters. Within minutes, similar messages were being sent to military commands all over the world. Humanity's first contact with alien life was not going as anyone had hoped. "Sir," Chief Dong-hyun called from the weapons station, "main battery is loaded and ready. Shall I return fire?" Captain Jihoon looked up at the alien vessel, still hanging in the sky above them like a silver cloud of death. Every instinct told him this was about to become the most important battle in human history. "1 round, Chief," he ordered quietly. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The Indomitable's forward turret, containing 3 massive railguns disguised, to look like old-fashioned naval cannons began to turn toward the sky. In the weapons magazine far below, a tungsten penetrator round weighing nearly 2 tons was loaded into the firing chamber. Captain Minho watched the primitive gun turret rotate with amusement. Look, they actually think their chemical explosive weapons can hurt us. This should be entertaining. The tungsten rod sat perfectly balanced in the firing chamber of the Indomitable's main gun. To anyone looking at the turret from outside, it appeared to be nothing more than an old-fashioned naval cannon, the kind that had fired shells using gunpowder for over a century. But hidden inside the familiar-looking barrel was technology that most alien species could barely understand. Chief Dongyun's hands moved across his control panel with the practiced ease of someone who had trained for this moment his entire career. The electromagnetic coils that lined the gun barrel began to charge with enough power to light up a small city. "Main battery ready, Captain," he announced quietly. "Targeting solution locked." Captain Ji-hoon looked up at the alien vessel one more time. Communications Officer Ji-won had been trying to reach them on every frequency humans knew, offering to negotiate and avoid violence. The aliens had responded with more demands for immediate surrender. "Sir," Ji-won said, shaking her head sadly, "they refuse to listen to any diplomatic solutions. They keep saying we are too primitive to understand their generous offer of slavery." "Very well," Captain Ji-hoon replied. "Chief Dong-hyun, you are authorized to fire one warning shot. Let's see how they respond to our own demonstration." High above them, Captain Minho was enjoying the show. His crew had gathered around the viewing screens to watch the primitive humans prepare their pathetic weapon. The gun turret looked so old-fashioned and crude compared to their own elegant energy weapons. "Look at them," Minho said to his officers. "They actually believe their simple chemical cannon can damage our shields. This will make an excellent recording to show other primitive species what happens when they resist the Galactic Council." His science officer was studying the human ship more carefully. Something about its design bothered him, though he could not quite figure out what. The armor plating looked thicker than the intelligence reports had suggested, and there were strange energy readings coming from various parts of the vessel. "Captain," the science officer said hesitantly, "perhaps we should be more careful. Their technology might be more advanced than we thought." "Nonsense," Minho replied with a wave of 4 of his 6 arms. "You saw our intelligence reports. They are barely out of their Stone Age. Watch and learn what happens to species that challenge the might of the Galactic Council." On the Indomitable, Chief Dong-hyun made one final check of his targeting system. The alien ship was holding steady at 50,000 feet, making it an easy target. The electromagnetic coils were fully charged and ready to accelerate the tungsten penetrator to a significant fraction of light speed. "Firing," he announced calmly, and pressed the trigger. The gun made no sound that anyone outside the ship could hear. There was no flash of flame or cloud of smoke like the old chemical cannons. Instead, invisible magnetic fields grabbed the tungsten rod and hurled it toward the alien vessel at a speed that would have been impossible using any conventional weapon. The 2-ton penetrator crossed the distance to the alien ship in less than 1/10 of a second. It struck the energy shields that surrounded the star's dominion with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The shields, designed to stop plasma bolts and energy beams, had no idea how to handle a solid object moving at such incredible speed. They flickered once, sparked wildly, and then collapsed completely as their generators overloaded and exploded. The tungsten rod continued through the shield barrier as if it had never existed and punched into the alien ship's hull. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire vessel, causing lights to flicker and crew members to be thrown from their feet. Captain Minho found himself lying on the deck of his bridge, his 3 eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Around him, his crew was picking themselves up and checking damage reports with growing panic in their voices. "Shields are down!" shouted the weapons officer, his crystal skin flashing bright red with alarm. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. The projectile went completely through the ship." "Impossible," Minho whispered, struggling to stand up. "Their primitive kinetic weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Our shields can stop anything they could possibly fire at us." His science officer was frantically checking and rechecking his instruments. "Captain, I'm reading massive structural damage. Whatever they fired at us was moving at nearly 15% of light speed. No chemical explosive could achieve such velocity. On the human ship, Tactical Officer So-young was studying the results of their shot with professional interest. The alien vessel had taken significant damage, but it was still flying and appeared to be combat-capable. "Sir," she reported to Captain Ji-hoon, "direct hit on target." Their defensive shields collapsed on impact. The penetrator passed through their hull in multiple places. However, the vessel remains operational. Captain Ji-hoon nodded. "Understood. Communications, signal the alien vessel. Tell them this was their warning shot. They have 1 minute to withdraw from Earth space, or we will open fire with full battery." Ji-won sent the message on all frequencies. Within seconds, the alien bridge erupted in panicked conversation as they received the human ultimatum. Warning. Shot? Captain Minho stared at the message in disbelief. That was a warning shot? His engineering officer, a nervous creature named Yun-soo, was studying the damage reports with growing horror. "Captain, if that was indeed a warning shot, then a full attack from their weapons would destroy this ship completely. I recommend immediate withdrawal." "Retreat?" Minho's voice rose to a painful shriek. "Retreat from primitives who have barely learned to leave their own planet? The Galactic Council would court-martial me and feed me to the void beasts." But even as he spoke, Minho could see the wisdom in his engineer's words. Whatever had hit his ship was far more advanced than anything in their intelligence reports. The humans had somehow developed kinetic weapons that could accelerate projectiles to relativistic speeds. "Analysis," he demanded. "How did they achieve such velocity with a kinetic projectile?" His science officer's many eyes were blinking rapidly with confusion. "Unknown, Captain. Our sensors detected no chemical explosion, no plasma discharge, no fusion reaction. The projectile simply accelerated to incredible speed inside their weapon." "Electromagnetic acceleration," Hyun-soo suggested quietly. "They might have developed railgun technology far beyond what we assumed possible." "Railguns?" Minho laughed, but there was no humor in it now. "Railguns are primitive magnetic weapons. Every species develops them early in their technological advancement and then abandons them for superior energy weapons. Unless, the science officer said slowly, they perfected railgun technology instead of abandoning it. Captain, what if these humans took a completely different technological path than every other species in the galaxy?" The thought sent a chill through the entire bridge crew. Every civilized species had followed the same basic pattern of development. Chemical weapons, then kinetic weapons, then energy weapons, then plasma technology, and finally the advanced systems used by the Galactic Council. But what if humanity had chosen to perfect kinetic weapons instead of moving on to energy systems? What if they had spent centuries making railguns more and more powerful while other species assumed they were still using primitive chemical cannons? "Incoming. Message from the primitive vessel," the communications officer announced, his voice shaking slightly. Captain Ji-hoon's calm voice filled the alien bridge once again. "Unknown vessel. Your time is up. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Minho looked around at his damaged ship and his frightened crew. His orders from the Galactic Council had been simple: conquer the primitive humans quickly and decisively. But nothing about this situation was going according to plan. "Captain," Hyun-soo said urgently, "I am detecting multiple energy signatures approaching our position. Whatever technology they used in their warning shot, they appear to have much more of it." Through the viewing screens, Minho could see lights beginning to appear in the darkness around Earth. At first they looked like stars, but they were moving too fast and in too organized a pattern. "How many ships?" he asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Sensors show at least 50 vessels approaching from various directions," the science officer reported. "All appear to be armed with the same type of kinetic weapons as the first ship." Captain Minho closed his 3 eyes and tried to think. Everything the Galactic Council knew about humanity was apparently wrong. Their weapons were not primitive. Their ships were not helpless metal boxes. And worst of all, they seemed to have been expecting this contact for some time. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a new transmission from the human vessel." The lights in space around Earth were not stars. They were the running lights of human warships that had been hidden in the darkness, waiting for exactly this moment. Ships that had been disguised as asteroids suddenly powered up their engines. Vessels hiding behind the moon began moving into attack positions. Space stations that looked like simple research facilities revealed themselves to be heavily armed battle platforms. Admiral Sun Woo stood on the bridge of the UHNS Retribution, the flagship of humanity's secret space fleet. She was a small woman, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 30 years, she had been preparing for this day, ever since human deep space sensors had first detected alien signals from across the galaxy. "All vessels report ready for combat operations," announced her tactical officer. "We have 57 ships in position around the target." Admiral Sunwoo nodded calmly. "Very good. Launch all fighter squadrons." Hidden launch bays across the IG solar system opened like metal flowers. Hundreds of small, fast fighter craft shot out into space, each one piloted by some of the best pilots humanity had ever trained. Squadron leader Minji checked her weapons systems one final time as her fighter accelerated toward the alien vessel. "Phoenix Squadron ready for combat," she reported over the radio. "All birds are hot and ready to engage." Her wingman Jae-hwan was flying beside her, his fighter loaded with missiles that could punch through the hull of any known spacecraft. "Confirmed. Phoenix leader. Targeting systems locked on the bogey." Captain Minho watched in growing horror as his sensors detected more and more human vessels. They seemed to be appearing from everywhere at once, as if the entire solar system was one giant trap, and he had flown right into the middle of it. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. His science officer was working frantically at his instruments, but the numbers kept climbing. "I count over 60 vessels now, Captain, and more are still appearing. Some of them are larger than our own dreadnought." Through the viewing screen, Minho could see the small human fighters swarming toward his ship like angry insects. Each one was tiny compared to his massive vessel, but there were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. "Those cannot be space-capable fighters," he said, trying to convince himself that his eyes were lying to him. "The intelligence reports said they had barely reached their own moon." Engineer Hyun-soo was studying the approaching fighters with instruments that could analyze their construction from thousands of miles away. What he saw made no sense according to everything they knew about human technology. "Captain, those fighters appear to be equipped with the same electromagnetic weapon systems as the larger ship. Each one carries enough firepower to damage a capital." "Ship! Impossible!" Minho shouted, but his voice was shaking now. "They are primitives! They cannot have developed such advanced spacecraft without us detecting them." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Ji-hoon was coordinating with the rest of the human fleet. Communications Officer Ji-won was managing dozens of radio channels, at once as ships reported their positions and readiness status. "Admiral Sunwoo confirms all vessels are in position," Ji-won announced. "She requests permission to begin the demonstration." Captain Ji-hoon looked up at the alien ship, which was now surrounded by human vessels on all sides. The aliens had won. Final chance to withdraw peacefully, but something told him they were too proud and too stupid to take it. "Signal the alien vessel one more time," he ordered. "Tell them they have 10 seconds to begin withdrawing from Earth space, or we will consider them a hostile invasion force." The message reached Captain Minho just as his damage control teams finished their reports on the hull breach. The tungsten rod had passed completely through his ship, destroying 2 weapon systems and killing 17 crew members. If the humans had dozens of ships with similar weapons, his vessel would not survive the first full attack. "Captain," Hyun-soo said urgently, "I recommend immediate retreat. We are severely outgunned and outnumbered." But Minho's pride would not let him accept defeat at the hands of what he still believed were primitive creatures. "No, we are the Galactic Council. We do not retreat from backwards planets that should be kissing our feet in gratitude." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their largest vessel and fire all plasma cannons. Full power. Show these primitives what real weapons can do." The Stars Dominion's main guns swiveled toward the UHNS Retribution and fired. Beams of green energy, each one carrying enough power to destroy a city, lanced across space toward the human flagship. Admiral Sunwoo watched the incoming fire with calm professional interest. "All ships. The alien vessel has opened fire. You are free to engage." The plasma beams struck the Retribution's hull and scattered harmlessly across armor, plating that had been designed specifically to absorb and redirect energy weapons. The ship shuddered slightly from the impact, but showed no significant damage. Minor hull heating on forward sections. reported the damage control officer. No penetration, no casualties. Thank you, Admiral Sunwoo replied politely. Helm, bring us about. Tactical, target their main weapon systems. Fire when ready. The human fleet opened fire all at once. Dozens of railgun rounds, each one accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, converged on the alien dreadnought from every direction. The tungsten penetrators struck the ship's hull with the combined force of several nuclear weapons. Captain, Minho felt his ship being torn apart around him. Explosions echoed through the corridors as bulkheads failed and atmosphere rushed out through dozens of holes. Emergency lights flickered on as main power systems overloaded and died. Hull breach on all decks, screamed his damage control officer. We have lost main engines, weapons control, and life support to sections 1 through 15. How? Minho whispered, staring at the tactical display that showed his once mighty dreadnought being systematically destroyed by weapons he had dismissed as primitive toys. How did they hide such advanced technology from us? Hyunsu was trying to keep the ship's remaining systems operational, but it was hopeless. Too many critical components had been destroyed. Captain, I believe they wanted us to underestimate them. Every piece of technology we observed was designed to look primitive while concealing far more advanced systems. Through the smoke and chaos, Minho could see the human fighters swarming around his crippled vessel. But instead of finishing them off, they seemed to be waiting for something. A new voice came over the communication system. This one belonged to Admiral Sunwoo, and it carried the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. Alien vessel, this is Admiral Sunwoo of the United Human Space Force. Your ship is disabled, and your crew is in danger. We are prepared to offer humanitarian assistance if you surrender immediately. Captain Minho looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was dead or injured. His weapons were destroyed. His engines were gone, and his hull was full of holes. The humans had demonstrated that they could have destroyed his ship completely at any time, but instead they were offering to help his crew survive. Sir, Hyunsu said quietly, our life support will fail within the hour. If we do not accept their offer, everyone aboard this ship will die. Minho closed his 3 eyes in defeat. The great Galactic Council had sent him to conquer a primitive planet, and instead he had discovered that humanity was far more advanced and dangerous than anyone had imagined. Signal surrender, he whispered. Tell them we accept their terms. As human rescue ships moved in to help the alien survivors, Captain Minho realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about Earth was completely wrong. The humans had not only been hiding their true technological capabilities, they had been preparing for this first contact for decades. And now the Galactic Council would have to face the terrifying reality that they had just made enemies of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Where once there had been laughter and casual conversation about conquering primitive worlds, now there was only stunned silence. The 12 representatives sat around their massive table, staring at the holographic display that showed the wreckage of the star's dominion floating in Earth's orbit. Admiral Kai's 4 eyes were fixed on the images of human rescue ships carefully extracting alien survivors from the destroyed dreadnought. His silver skin had turned a sickly gray color, and his hands shook as he tried to process what had happened to his supposedly invincible fleet. Explain this to me again, he said, in a voice barely above a whisper. One primitive planet with crude metal ships has destroyed our most advanced dreadnought? Wu Jin stood at his usual position near the display screens, but now he looked very different from the nervous young analyst who had presented the intelligence report just days earlier. His large black eyes were steady and confident as he delivered his new assessment. The humans were never primitive, he announced clearly. Everything we observed was a carefully planned deception designed to make us underestimate their true capabilities. The butterfly-like representative fluttered her wings in agitation. Impossible! Our intelligence networks are perfect. We have been observing them for years. We observed what they wanted us to observe, Wu Jin replied, activating a new series of images. Their battleships that we thought were crude metal boxes were actually equipped with electromagnetic railguns more advanced than anything in our arsenal. Their steel armor that we laughed at was specially designed to absorb and redirect energy weapons. The display showed detailed scans of human technology that had been captured during the battle. Weapon systems that looked primitive on the outside, but contained revolutionary magnetic acceleration technology. Armor plating that appeared simple, but was actually composed of materials that could withstand plasma fire. Communication systems that seemed basic, but could coordinate the movements of hundreds of ships across an entire solar system. But how did they hide entire fleets from our sensors? Demanded Nara.